Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, BADBABY. And tonight we are going to listen to my interview with John Moore on Planet X. All right. Welcome to the show, John. How are you this evening?
I'm wonderful. How are you, my dear?
Oh, I'm all right.
All right. Good.
I would, for those that don't know a lot about you that are in the window right now, and I have a chat room going live, and so there will be questions in the chat that I can read and ask you. But why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into researching Planet X?
Okay. Well, we'll begin from the beginning.
Okay.
The spring of 2001, two friends of mine who are both amateur researchers, they approached me independently. One didn't know the other was approaching me to tell me about Planet X, and they come in to tell the story of what they learned about this planetary-sized object that comes through our solar system every 3,600 years, causing massive problems, including 200-mile-an-hour winds, massive earthquakes, and eventually a pole shift and the flooding of all of coastal areas worldwide. I listened to them patiently, each one of them, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, you guys need tinfoil hats really bad. But, so I listened, and I had enough respect for their work to go ahead and approach a friend of mine who is, as we say, connected to the lettered agencies. He's an outside vendor to a number of the lettered agencies. And I told him the story, and he basically told me the same thing. He thought I needed a tinfoil hat. But he went ahead and approached people he knew in the lettered agencies and got back with me about a month later. And he tells me the following. He says, John, it's exactly what you said it is. The government's been aware of this since 1979. They've been planning for it since 1979. Yes, it is real. So I began my own research at that point in time. This would have been late spring, early summer 2001. And I did the things people typically do when they get involved in this, for reading Zechariah Sitchin, Emmanuel Velikovsky, and so forth. And I was learning a lot. And then fast forward to the summer of 2005, I'm having lunch with a friend of mine who I served with in U.S. Army Special Forces, a dual service veteran who was also a Navy SEAL. And during lunch, I'm telling him about Planet X, and he commences to tell me about a classified briefing he attended in 1985, which would have been 10 years before. 20 years before, excuse me. At that briefing, they were told the following. They were told, gentlemen, during your lifetimes, these oceans worldwide are going to come out of their bases, flooding all coastal areas worldwide. And when it comes time for you to retire, you just might want to consider moving to the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks as one of the known safe havens. It didn't occur to me while we were having lunch that he was talking about the effects of Planet X. I figured that out a few hours later. I called him on the phone and I said, we need to get together and talk. So we got together a few days later, and he was the first of three veterans to recreate the Navy map that they were shown in the classified briefing. So
let me stop you right there for
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
The Navy map that is online is not the correct one. Am I right?
Yeah, that popped up about 3 years ago. That's pretty much the one put out by the fairly well-known psychic. In fact, I got a copy of it just a few feet from me here. Let's see that map. It would be helpful for me to pull that out because I'm blanking out on the guy's name.
Well, you do have the correct one, right?
I do, yeah. And there's about 20 of these similar maps that you can find on the internet. And here's the map right here. This is a pretty good size, full color.
Yeah, I'm curious because
Gordon Michael Scallion.
That I look at that looks authentic.
Yeah.
Where I live, I might need to have land.
Yeah, that map that was published 3 years ago, portrayed as a Navy map. Gordon Michael Scallion, the psychic, that's his map.
Mm-hmm.
The real map is on my DVD that's offered for sale at my website, Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You. So let's move forward from there. That was August of myself, the retired intelligence officer, his wife, and my friend, the college professor, we all go to a pizza place, a college hangout there in Raleigh. They have pizza and talk, socialize. During our conversation, the four of us at this table, I find out that the intelligence officer did a 3-year tour of duty with another service, that being the Navy Submarine Corps. So I immediately knew I had to ask the question, and I'd never met this man before in my life. I may never see him before again. So I asked him the question, tell me what you know about rising ocean levels. Before he can speak up, his wife, who's sitting next to me, says the following: John, we're getting ready to retire. We're at our last duty assignment at the Pentagon. We need to pick the place to retire. So we picked the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks because of rising ocean levels. I immediately made an appointment to meet him a week later at a local hamburger place to make the second revisions on a map that was begun a few weeks before, which he agreed to do it, and he made the second revisions. Now, if you read my bio, you prefer to be called Bad Baby?
Yeah.
Okay. If you read my bio, Bad Baby, you'll see that I also teach concealed carry training so people can get their permits to carry.
I saw that.
Right. Well, one of my pistol students, a couple of weeks later, I found out during our lunch break, was a retired naval submarine officer. So I made an appointment with him to have lunch the following week, and so we're having lunch at the country club, and I can mention his name because he's now died of cancer, which way too many submarine veterans get because of exposure to radiation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the nature of the beast. But anyway, I say, Steve, tell me what you know about rising ocean levels. And he says, John, I signed a 5-year non-disclose agreement. I've been out 3 years. I could put my pension at risk by telling you what I know about this classified matter. I said, well, Steve, can you blink your eyes once for yes and twice for no? And he did just what you're doing, Bad Baby. He laughed. And you know, and then he went in, we went ahead and had our conversation, and I brought the map with me. He made the third and final revisions on that map that's on my DVD. It's as close as we can get it, Bad Baby, to the map that was shown in these briefings. Now, there's a couple of interesting side notes here. My DVD, it's actually a 2 DVD set. The first disc came out late August, early September 2008. And I'm at in fact, I just picked them up from the duplicator. And I'm at a fundraiser. I had a client charged with first-degree murder. It was a horrendous murder case. And the fundraiser was sponsored by the Western Cherokee Nation in Salem, Missouri. It was a nice early fall, late summer day, warm weather, barbecue, live music, pretty girls. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So I'm walking around there enjoying a barbecue, and I see this gentleman with an official-looking ID tag hanging from his shirt that said the following with his photograph on it: Director of Emergency Preparedness, Western Cherokee Nation, Tim Spencer. So I introduced myself, and Tim and I are talking, and as we're wrapping up our conversation, I say, I have something I'd like you to watch. So I got him a copy of my DVD, and he took it. And I didn't know much about Tim Spencer at the time. We've since become very good friends. He calls me up a week later. He says, John, I've seen that map on your DVD. I said, really? He says, yeah, really. He says, in 1985, I was doing classified work for the Navy. I was in the submarine corps. I was down in New Orleans. I walked across the hallway in the building where everything was classified. They had to get a cup of coffee. And there was this odd map on the wall with strange markings that made no sense whatsoever. And there was a Master Chief. The Master Chief is a high-ranking enlisted man, E8 or E9. And he talked to the Master Chief. Said, what's the deal with this map? And he says, young sailor, what you need to know about this map is the following. When it comes time to retire, he points to a white area on the map. This is where you want to move, the white area. And that's the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks. And he said, thank you, Master Chief. And Tim Spencer was from Central Florida. And he was going to retire and move back to Central Florida. But because of that map and the quick briefing he got, he moved to the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks.
Florida's not a good place to return. It's going to be gone, isn't it?
Florida's going to be gone. Yeah. That's reality. Now, in the spring of 2009, one of my listeners, and as you know, Bad Baby, being a talk show host, you talk to a lot of people all over the country, and myself all over the world.
Yeah.
So one of my listeners got my DVD in the spring of 2009. He calls me up and he says, "John, I've seen that map on your DVD." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, really." So he says the following. It was 1979. I was a young sailor in New Orleans. I got an assignment to set up a briefing room for these admirals to have a Saturday morning briefing. He says, "John, admirals don't do Saturday morning briefings." So he sets up the tables, the chairs, the sound system, the lights, the projector, and he says there was a map on the wall. He says, "I was not in the briefing. It was a classified briefing, closed door, admirals only. But the map had strange markings on it. It made no sense to me." He says the admirals show up for the briefing. They're all smiling, smoking cigars, patting each other on the back, telling jokes, inquiring about how everybody's kids and grandkids are. And they go into the briefing room. When they come out of the big briefing room, Bad Baby, he said they all looked like their puppy dogs had died. They had just got one of the very first briefings. That's as far back as I can trace it. And I know for a fact that it's only been weeks, if not a few months, beforehand the government had finally figured out what was going on with the 10th planet. By 1985, the Submarine Corps was basically giving these briefings to just about everybody. Now, I don't know what you know about. What do you know about the Submarine Corps, Ben?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know that the Navy is heavily involved in a lot of the programs.
Well, let me educate you real quick. Give you the Reader's Digest version of the United States Navy Submarine Corps.
Okay.
First of all, to be on the crew of a submarine, whether you're 20...
There are different branches, correct?
Close. They're part of the U.S.
They're like, I don't know, Navy on steroids?
They're part of the U.S. Navy, but they're not.
See, I knew they were different.
Now, they have their own uniforms. They don't wear the uniforms the rest of the Navy does. The lowest IQ allowed to be on the U.S. Navy submarine is 120, and they go up from there. These are very bright men. They go through very strict psychological profile testing. You know, Bad Baby, if you're going to be in a tin can with 100 guys...
Yeah, they don't want you to lose your marbles.
Oh, boy. No, not at all.
Yeah.
Typically, whether you're an officer or enlisted, if you go into the Navy Submarine Corps, you'll spend your entire career there and never go anywhere else in the U.S. Navy.
I'm sure you have to have a high IQ, too.
That's why I just said 120 is the lowest allowed.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very bright guy. Anyway, they take care of their own. You're 300 feet below the ocean. Your life literally depends on what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So they take care of their own, and these submarine officers started briefing their own people beginning in 1985. That's as far back as I can trace the most of them being briefed. Now, I was at a bit of a disadvantage initially. They told these men what would happen. They did not tell them why it would happen or how it would happen.
And were they not allowed to tell anyone else, John?
They were under non-disclosure agreements for 5 years, basically, as far as I can tell. And most of these guys have a pension. And Tim Spencer doesn't have a pension. He got 100% disability from being injured twice on the same submarine. One injury broke his back. The other was exposure to an almost lethal dose of ionizing radiation, which almost killed him by itself. So they can't take his pension away from him. He's the only veteran who I've even asked to go public with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can't take that away from him. And I don't want to risk somebody's pension by, telling them.
That's exactly what they do. They go right for your finances.
Well, yeah, and it's a heavy hammer to hang over your head.
Yeah, I know. When you got to speak out about things they don't want people to know, you put their neck on the chopping block. Believe me, I know.
Absolutely, and that's reality. Anyway, the men in the audience weren't told how this would happen. They were told it would happen, but not how. So it took me...
So, in other words, they were told
admirals may have been, but the low-ranking sailors weren't. It turns out it's common knowledge in every university that teaches oceanography. Now here's the deal, Bad Baby. Sea level is measured at Cornwall, England, and they did that about 200-something years ago. They took a big rock at the edge of the ocean in Cornwall, England. They made a horizontal line. They said, "This is sea level." Now, Cornwall, England is almost as far north as Moscow. It's really far north of the Atlantic. When you get down to the equator, sea level is not quite 500 feet above that horizontal line in Cornwall, England. So going north and south from the equator, Bad Baby, you've got a bulge of water consisting of hundreds of thousands of cubic miles of water above what we call sea level, held in place by two things: gravity and the rotation of the Earth. Anything that disrupts the rotation of the Earth or the axis, the poles, is going to disrupt that bulge of water. That's where the flooding is going to come from, this disruption of that bulge of water because of the pole shift. This has happened many times in the planet, in the history of our planet. If you were to go out tomorrow morning, for example, to those massive flat rocks in Arizona they call mesas, you'll find seashells on top of them. You know that?
No.
Well, they're there. A friend of mine, a guy served with military intelligence, he was on vacation. He climbed to the top of one of them. He says, "John, there's seashells all over the place up there."
I know that they're finding a lot of strange things,
Right.
That people are looking down the rabbit hole, and it does show up.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm hearing two different dates. I'm hearing every 8.
Don't look for a date. Forget that.
Oh,
Forget
that
that.
doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't matter. It
So
doesn't
that's
matter.
just the disinformation crap. No, there isn't it.
Listen, Bad Baby, I was searching. It's human nature. You're going to search for a date.
Well, I do.
Here's how.
But I want some facts. I want it to come like what you're talking
Of
about.
course you do, but I'm going to give you some facts. I'm going to give you some facts. The summer of 2001, I made an appointment with a private observatory to try to see Planet X. That's how ignorant I was. You can't see it from the northern hemisphere, at least not yet. Okay, here's some facts. June 12th, 2010. You want a date? Here's a date. June 12th, 2010. The Gulf Stream stopped. Now, that's a direct consequence of the 10th planet. I can lay it out for you. There's you're probably familiar with Genesis Communications, Alex Jones, and so forth.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I work with Dr. Bill Deagle. He's on Genesis.
I know. I've heard of Dr. Bill Deagle. He was supposed to be a guest on my show.
Well, he's a character, but it makes you wonder if having a 200 IQ is a blessing or a curse. But I'm with Dr. Deagle twice a week for an hour each. But Genesis has archives anybody can listen to, so if you make a note, Bad Baby, you can listen to the following two shows. The third and fourth Fridays of July 2010. He and I and another scientist named Ann Morrison, we interviewed the following person: Dr. Luigiani Zangari, PhD, scientist, living and working in Italy. His job at the time, and probably still is to work with a team of PhDs on nothing but the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf Stream. That's what this team of scientists does. The third Thursday of July, he made the following statement. He says, "Gentlemen, we think the Gulf," and of course he doesn't speak the best English, but you can understand him. We believe the Gulf Stream has stopped. We're going to redo our calculations and report back to you. The fourth Friday, he reported, yes, in fact, June 12th, 2010, the Gulf Stream had stopped. Now, go back in time to the fall of 2005. I've debriefed these three people with this information. I'm searching, and I come across the following information, that the Gulf Stream had lost 30% of its mass and velocity, and they were estimating 5 to 20 years in the future it would stop. Now, there's a Hollywood film, Bad Baby, titled The Day After Tomorrow with Dennis Quaid.
I've seen it.
in there, and there's science fiction. The main premise, the main theme of the movie has to do with the Gulf Stream stopping. That's how the movie begins.
Yeah. Weren't they on the North Pole?
They got three scientists on an island off the coast of Scotland, and they're watching, they're watching soccer more than they are the monitors, but there's these buoys out in the North Atlantic monitoring sea surface temperatures. And that's the beginning of the film, is the Gulf Stream stopping.
In that movie, everything froze real fast.
Well, what I've sometimes said publicly, Bad Baby, is that we're living that film in slow motion.
Well, kind of last winter was the same way. I mean, it was like an ice age.
Okay, let's go back to the Gulf Stream. And this is why I'm saying you don't need to be looking at a date. We're already living the consequences of the 10th planet.
I figured we did by the weathers and all the volcanoes becoming active. And, did you get my video that I sent you about the crash in Mexico?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
These are all, some are direct, some are related, some aren't related. It's hard to figure out which is which.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What about the animals, all the animals killed? Does that have to do with the Gulf Stream stopping?
There's other things that account for that. I just found out yesterday at lunch with a friend that a couple of nuclear weapons were tossed to the ocean that they thought were dangerous off the coast of New Jersey. It caused a massive fish kill a few years back. What they was
like we don't have enough.
In the media, it was portrayed as a mystery, but it was actually a nuclear weapon in the ocean that caused that fish kill. This is important for all your listeners because we're living the effects of that right now on August 22nd, 2014. There's ocean currents. All these oceans have ocean currents that circulate north, south, east, west, loop to loop, and so forth. The Gulf Stream was given its name by Benjamin Franklin about 200-something years ago. It's also called the North Atlantic Thermohaline Conveyor by scientists. Warm water coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico goes up the east coast of the United States. Up until June of 2010, it started going north by northeast at about Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, went all the way across the Atlantic to where it got to the British Isles, warming up England, Ireland, Scotland, where it split. Some going north to warm up Scandinavia, the rest going south to warm up Western Europe, France, and so forth. What makes that happen, what allows it to happen, is the salt content of the ocean. Salt water behaves differently than fresh water. And there's been a number of university experiments to prove that this is the case. Melting freshwater ice in Greenland, melting freshwater ice in the Antarctic, which is melting from the bottom, by the way, for decades, has been reducing the salinity of these oceans. So what I read in the fall of 2005 was a consequence of this dilution of the salt water by the fresh water. Now let's fast forward another few years to 2010. Something else happened. The British Petroleum oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. A big part of the engine that drove the Gulf Stream was something called the Gulf Loop current. Now the oil in the Gulf of Mexico, there was so many millions of barrels of oil that it caused the Gulf Loop current to be broken. That's the water that came out between Cuba and Florida and joined up with the rest of the Gulf Stream to make the Gulf Stream do what it's done for so many centuries. According to Dr. Zangari, the Gulf Stream's broken and never will come back. But Dr. Zangari, in those two interviews, shared something with us that is not common knowledge. And the following thing he shared was the Gulf Stream used to, past tense, regulate the jet stream. Now, what part of the country are you in, Bad Baby? You're in Michigan.
I'm in Michigan, yeah.
Okay. Now, 50 miles above your head, it's going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 200-mile-an-hour wind. So it's the jet stream. The jet stream, beginning in 2010, when it was no longer regulated by the Gulf Stream, began acting in very very erratic, unpredictable fashion. The jet stream acting in a predictable fashion is what gave us predictable weather patterns, more or less predictable, that all modern agriculture is based on, especially when it comes to growing grains, which is grains are what feed the people, grains are what feed the animals. Corn, wheat, rice, soybeans, spelt, oats, barley, and so forth.
And this is really affecting the farmers
right now,
isn't it?
It is.
The drought that's going on in California is
part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it. Every business, Bad Baby, has a business model. Here's the business model for growing grains. For every one bad harvest, you'll get 4 good harvests, and they've built everything they do when it comes to buying and leasing farmland, buying farm equipment, buying seed, fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, taking on debt. Most businesses have debt. The ability to service that debt is part of the business plan. That business plan is broken because the business model is broken, because they can no longer depend on that 4 good harvests for 1 bad one to be something that will work. That's where we are in agriculture right now, as we speak. The business model for growing grains is broken. The ones that are going to survive this are going to own their own land outright, own all their equipment outright with no debt, and have a stock of seed put back and be able to pay cash for seed, fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, because it's too risky to do otherwise and take out loans to plant 1,000 acres or 2,000 acres of corn, soybeans, barley, wheat, whatever it might be.
And we're already seeing the effect of this in the grocery store, in the price of meat and everything is going so high.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to make some chili the other day. I don't eat a lot of meat, so I don't keep it on hand, I try to do smoothies and green vegetables, and I teach people to wash the radiation out of their body, holistically.
That's great.
I went in and bought a hamburger, and it was $13.
How much hamburger?
It was like 4 pounds, a little bit over.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing.
And I was like, my God, they didn't want to remortgage my house, they just want to pot of chili.
Right, well, hold on, hold your horse, hold on there, Bad Baby, because we're at the beginning.
Yeah, I know that.
We're running about 22% annual rate of inflation on food.
I know, I realize that.
And the people who buy the food for the family, whether it's the mom or the dad or whatever it is, we've had 5 or 6 years now of packages getting smaller while they keep the price the same. They played that game. The packages can't get any smaller.
Yeah.
People are price
sensitive.
Unfortunately,
a lot of people are going like, well, it's cheaper for me to buy a Happy Meal, and that's pure poison.
Oh, my, yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of the poorer people would go run through there and get their kid a Happy Meal for dinner because that's all they can afford.
Well, it's still cheaper to buy raw product, I think.
Yeah, but, people don't realize, they don't know that that's poison. I mean, it's coming out now, but,
most people still don't know. I tell everybody that I can about there's a woman, I don't recall her name, going around giving speeches with a Happy Meal that's several years old and looks like it just was bought an hour ago.
Yeah, I saw a video where a scientist put it in, was holding it in a claw, and he put it in a beacon with acid from your stomach, and then he pulled it out 4 hours later, and it was black and goopy. I thought, oh, I just lost my ass. Okay, well, let's get back on topic.
Well, I need to. It's human nature, and we don't need to leave. The thing about a date and being able to see it, that's 2 things people immediately focus on. And I did the same.
Yeah,
and it's natural, it's normal, and my response is get over it. These Navy veterans, and I think the Navy veterans are the best example. They don't even know. They weren't even told about Planet X. They were told, gentlemen, these events will happen in your lifetime.
And how old are they? Were they young or were they elderly men?
Well, when they could have been anywhere from 20 to 40 when we got the briefing, but typical Navy veterans only get out somewhere between 40 and 45 years old when they get their 20 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, these men, they don't know a date. They're not concerned about a date. Here's what they do. They move to the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks. They buy their 5, 10, 20 something acres, whatever it might be, 40 acres, and they start a hobby farm. And a hobby farm is where you grow fruits and vegetables and animals for your personal use as opposed to a commercial business.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that. They establish a hobby farm where they can be independent for fruits and vegetables. They have some chickens and goats and start a second career. Typically, men and women in their early to mid-40s, of course, they're going to have a second career. And they just live their life and don't worry about a date. And
that's what I tell everybody. Take it a day at a time.
Absolutely.
Aware that there is a possibility it could happen any day or in your lifetime. And I always try to tell people to be ready with emergency supplies. And you aren't going to be able to go in and buy aspirin or Band-Aids and,
Right. Well, my friend, Professor McCanny, who's written 2 books on the 10th planet, he was asked a question by a lady about, she wanted a date. And his response was, "Ma'am, if I give you a date, what are you going to do? Buy another case of tuna fish?"
I'd probably buy myself a fifth of liquor.
Well, I'm thinking about getting a good bottle of single malt scotch, actually, just for that
and I'm just going to sit on the list and watch it come in.
Yeah. I think a fifth of Glenlivet would probably be good for that. I haven't had a drink of scotch for more than 20 years, but I think that would rise to the occasion of cracking the bottle. Where do you want to go with this conversation?
What exactly? Explain, because I've heard so many different stories about when it gets close to us, what is it dragging, that we're going to get hit with meteors, we're going to get hit with ice balls. I feel now that it is pulling on our planet, and that's why we're having the weird weather and the cracks, like I showed you in that video, and the drought and all that. But is it pulling debris? I mean, and do you think that, my personal feeling is that I don't think it will hit us. I think it will go by us and cause devastation.
Well, that's what it's done in the past. And we have no reason to believe that it will do anything different this time. I just so happen to live about 10 miles from one of the largest meteor craters on the planet. It's 11 miles in diameter. And the name of it is Crooked Creek Meteor Crater. I just pulled it up on Google here.
Does it have water in it?
No, in fact, I didn't know it was a meteor crater. Let's see. I misspoke myself on the size of it. It says 7 kilometers in diameter, every 3.5 miles, which is 3.5 times bigger than a meteor crater in Arizona, which has been a tourist attraction for decades. 7 kilometers in diameter. This planet's been hit by really big rocks multiple times in the past. There's a string of, and I was doing my research, there's a string of meteor craters. If you plot on a map the meteor crater in Arizona, the Route 66 tourist stop, and Crooked Creek in Crawford County, Missouri, not far from me, there's a whole string of them across the United States, 5 or 6 or 8 of them, I forget how many, almost in a straight line across the United States of meteor craters, very large meteor craters. Now, I don't know how they can estimate the time frame. They say 320 to 80 million years ago, plus or minus. I don't know where they come up with these numbers. But we're pretty sure that one of the passages of the 10th planet is recorded in Genesis, where they talk about maybe sure which book of the Bible it was, but the river Nile turning red when Moses was leaving Egypt. That's one I'm thinking about. Genesis, there's actually two recordings.
And the river turned red then?
Noah's flood and Moses' passage out of Egypt. When the rivers turned red in the river Nile, I mentioned Emmanuel Velikovsky earlier. Dr. Velikovsky did something no archaeologist, and Dr. Velikovsky was a medical doctor, not an archaeologist, but he did something no archaeologist never taken the time or bothered to do before, and that was to reconcile calendars from one culture to the next. Nobody ever bothered to do that. You cannot line up historical events that took place at the same time in South America and China and Europe unless you reconcile the calendars first. So he did that. It turned out, Bad Baby, that when the river Nile turned red in Egypt, it also turned red all the rivers and waters, South America, Northern Europe, and China all turned red at the same time. All those cultures had calendars and left written records. When the Hebrews are out in the desert and they're hungry and they got manna from heaven to eat, remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of a brown, sweet-tasting, gooey stuff was on the ground every morning. Well, it turned out in South America, Northern Europe, and China, they found the same sticky, sweet-tasting stuff every morning at the same time because they had written records and left-hand calendars.
Mm-hmm.
We believe it was carbohydrates in the atmosphere that when the sun hit them, they condensed and fell to the ground and you could pick it up and eat it. There's other examples. The book of Isaiah, the Hebrew army needs a few more hours of daylight to defeat their enemy. They needed a longer day. And they got it. It's recorded in the book of Isaiah. Well, here's Velikovsky's reasoning. If the day in the Sinai desert was longer by several hours, therefore the sun, when it came up over China the following morning, had to be several hours later. And guess what? It did come up several hours later. Of course, that's scientifically, that's the only way that can happen. This is not magic. It's science. The Chinese had written records and calendars. And you can imagine if you're in charge of China, you would tell your scribe, I think we better write this down. The sun came up 3 hours late this morning. That's a pretty big deal. So that's some of the work Velikovsky did. Velikovsky was hammered mercilessly for the work he did by traditional archaeologists. Velikovsky had the time and the money to travel all over the planet and see the effects of probably what was the most recent passage of the 10th planet, where he went to caves, and these caves are still there to be found.
Yeah, I had read about the caves.
Right.
That people had found etchings in them. And they kind of told
well, that's a different kind of cave. These caves had all kinds of animals where the bones where these animals had died were all jumbled together as if they'd been smashed by a giant wave. Now, one of the more interesting caves was the man-made drawings are in France, where these predate anything known in recorded history. And the cave drawings show what appear to be men and women walking around wearing dresses and trousers, and the women carrying purses.
Now, some of the drawings in the pyramids actually tell the story of the planet coming by, don't they?
I'm personally not aware of that.
Yeah, I saw some, I went in and researched that a little bit, yeah. Actually,
I know there's no hieroglyphics inside the pyramid. The pyramids predate the pharaohs, the pharaonic pharaohs. In fact, the pyramid in the Valley Pyramids in Bosnia is almost 3 times as large as the Great Pyramid of Giza. And we now know that we've only, I think this summer of 2014 is only the 4th year of professional archaeologists investigating the pyramids in Bosnia, the Valley of the Pyramids. We now know that the big pyramid there in Bosnia is concrete, just like much of the Great Pyramid of Giza is concrete. And that's been well established a number of years ago.
concrete?
The pyramids are older than the pharaohs by many, many thousands of years. They were not built to bury people. That's a fantasy. There's no hieroglyphics inside the pyramids. We now know the Sphinx was underwater for centuries, and the Sphinx has not been underwater since the pharaohs were ruling. That hasn't happened. So there's a whole subject, a whole area.
We'll do another show about the pyramids.
There's an entire discipline generally called forbidden archaeology.
Oh, let me ask you then. The weather we're going through, it's obvious.
Bizarre, freaky, dangerous weather.
The effects that we're suffering right now from it coming at us. The weather that we're going through, like when you had severe flooding, they just had an ice storm over here in Michigan, and the hail was the size of softballs. It destroyed the trailer park. You know, so
it sounds like a scene out of the day after tomorrow.
Is changing from this?
Say again?
Is that all happening because our atmosphere, our outer atmosphere of our planet, is that changing because of nuclear coming at us? Is that what's causing all this?
Well, the jet stream acting in bizarre, freakish ways is affecting all our weather. The sun, of course, is the main source of energy that creates our weather, and the sun's activity has diminished greatly. Professor McCanny has talked about that publicly a number of times recently. So it's hard to say what is causing what, Bad Baby. I mean, I'm a homicide detective. I'm not a scientist. I read the books of the scientists, but I'm no scientist. I do my best to stay on message, repeating what I know to be real science and not speculating unduly in areas that I really am outside my knowledge.
So our experience, I mean, I read an article today about what's going on at Yellowstone, and they're saying that the molten lava is coming up out of the ground and just forming little pockets. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware. I've been tracking Yellowstone now for about 10 years. It does present a clear and present danger to the United States national security, the United States continuing as a country. If it went off as bad as we've been told it could go off, it would reduce the United States to, I don't know, we would no longer be a superpower, and it could create 2 or 3 years with no summer because of the particulate was put in the northern hemisphere atmosphere, causing a cooling effect for at least
3 years with no summer means no food.
Precisely, and most, and this is the northern hemisphere, the majority of food is grown north of the equator. By comparison, maybe 20% or so is grown south of the equator.
Well,
it would be a disaster. It would be an absolute disaster.
To grow their own food. I had a guest on here that was teaching hydroponics, and these are things that people need to research into. If they have to feed themselves, they're going to have to figure out how to feed themselves.
Well, you're absolutely right, and you can't learn how to do this out of a book. A book is helpful, but there's no substitute to getting your hands in the dirt and actually doing it. There is no substitute.
And, you're also going to have to figure out some way to generate light for your plants because, like you said, there'll be no sun.
Absolutely. And it's going to be tough, and it'll be, under those conditions, it would be very tough to stay alive and get enough food to stay alive. It would be really tough.
Well, I guess we'll have to be like Gilligan's Island and have the professor set up a bicycle that you sit on and it runs the generator.
Well, that was a little comedy relief there, Bad Baby, but the reality of what we could be facing is
I know. It is. It's not
pretty tough stuff.
Yeah. But I feel there will, a lot of people won't survive, but there will be survivors.
Well, there has been in the past. Our planet has had and reached high levels of high technology 12,000 years ago.
water running from the Mississippi down in there?
No, that didn't change. That didn't change the salinity of the ocean. But that's been doing that forever.
Mm-hmm.
No, the salinity of the ocean changed because of fresh water from melting ice in Greenland and the Antarctic.
Now, you said it's melting from the bottom up.
Melting from the bottom.
It's the molten lava is coming to the surface?
The planet is warming up from the inside, and my research tells me that's a direct consequence of interaction with the 10th planet.
And that has happened in the past?
As far as we know. There's maps, there's ancient maps showing in fact, Christopher Columbus had a map with him on his journeys that showed the Antarctic with no ice.
And what about all the volcanoes that are coming alive lately?
The majority of volcanoes are in the ocean, and they certainly contribute to the ocean warming up, there's no doubt. And there's been a dramatic increase in both volcanism and seismic activity worldwide, as most people who've been paying attention are aware of. In fact, the Richter scale was developed by Charles F. Richter. Shortly after his death in 1984, the Richter scale was reduced by one full number value. So a 5-point earthquake became a 4-point earthquake. It's a scale that doubles with every 1/10 of a point. So when you go from a 4.0 to a 4.1, that doubles the magnitude of the earthquake. So a reduction by one full number value is a 1,000% reduction, Bad Baby. And they knew in 1984 what would be happening 20, 30 years in the future, which is right now, which is a dramatic increase in both the number and severity of earthquakes. And so by reducing the magnitude by one full number value, they are managing to keep a lot of the population in the dark a little bit longer.
Yeah, and even the readings we're getting now are suppressed.
Oh, they are. The initial readings are automated. They come out when an earthquake happens. It's an automated system that's posted on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings come back either the next morning or within minutes if it's during the workday, and they'll reduce it by 0.1 or 0.2 or whatever they decide to do to make it look not quite so bad. The automated system is reliable and real. The human beings are the ones that mess around with it and change it.
Why do you think they aren't telling us?
There's enough people that pay attention in high school and college science that they don't want scared. So they're doing it to manipulate public opinion and public knowledge.
Well, in a way, if we did tell people, don't you think it was, I mean, a lot of people that listen to these shows are like, yeah, it's a conspiracy theorist, blah, blah, and they just, go on their way. I heard a nice little story you told me, but, if it was being told on the headline news, don't you think everybody would be heading for the hills?
They're not concerned about panic. They're not concerned about everybody heading for the hills, Bad Baby. Here's what they're concerned about. Half the jobs in this country are a consequence of small business hiring a payroll of 100 people or less. Frequently, the owners of those businesses almost always have a fairly good education and frequently fairly substantial financial wherewithal. If they became knowledgeable of this, and very many of them decide, honey, I think we'll lock up the door and head for the Ozarks, shut down this business because it's the right thing to do. A decision based on knowledge, not panic. That's what they're concerned about, and what that would do to the economy is a percentage of these businesses just saying, "I'm out of here." That's what they're concerned about. That's what they don't want to
But
have.
I heard that people would say, well, I just won't go to work anymore.
Well, if you're
I go to work,
if you're a self-employed carpenter, it's not a big deal. But if you got a payroll of 100 people, it becomes a big deal real quick.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And especially since no one really knows exactly when it's coming. But we can tell that it is approaching.
Well, NASA knows. They're not telling.
Yeah.
NASA, the Pioneer 10 space probe was sent out in 1979. They found it. They've been tracking it ever since. NASA knows. They're not telling.
I looked at some of the pictures that they are fixing up, I saw a couple of them where they missed that part of it, you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
But, yeah. So, they flipped up a couple times and you can see something there.
Well, I don't doubt that you can spend some time and find some anomalies that slips past the sensors. You're probably better off, Bad Baby, learning how to grow a tomato, quite frankly, and spending time doing that.
I live on a farm, Jeff.
Okay, there you go.
Been on a farm for 28 years.
All right.
So, and I was raised my father raised pigeons and rabbits, and I used to help him skin the rabbits and make wine, so I am an old soul.
That sounds good to me. That's the kind of woman I want to have on my team.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to do a little hard labor.
Yeah, I was trained to skin rabbits and squirrels by my grandfather, and that's, I spent summers with my grandparents, and if I shot a squirrel, we had fresh meat for dinner. If I didn't, we didn't.
Yeah. Well, and I tell people, that people say, I can't shoot an animal, and how would I catch it? Well, get a live trap.
Yeah.
Well, you just got to use your brain.
You do. Yes. Hunger can be a great motivator.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things you can eat that don't have to be a rabbit, or,
That's true.
If you know the right mushrooms and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, Bad Baby, we're coming up on the top of the hour here. Anything you want to ask before we wrap it up?
Oh, we go 2 hours here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we aren't wrapping it up unless you want to leave.
Well, I'll hang in there with you. I thought it was an hour, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Well, we can ask anybody that we've got some callers in here on the line if anyone wants to ask a question. But one of the things I do want to ask you is, I hear so many different names. I hear Newberry, Planet X, Wormwood. All of them are the ones.
Every culture has its own name, Bad Baby. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. But I mean, people say, well, that's not Newberry, that's not this and that. I feel that all these names are the same thing.
They are. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see if anyone
Planet X is a generic term. Professor McCann, who's a personal friend, he's a credentialed astrophysicist. He taught astrophysics at the university level. And he says Planet X is a generic term used for any large unidentified planet.
Okay. Ohio, do you have any questions for Johnson?
No, not really. I was just rather intrigued was you said in 1984 they were knowledgeable and kept it back.
79.
79?
Right. Now, the something we didn't mention is the Vatican is in this up to their eyeballs.
Yeah, don't they have a picture of or a statue or something that revolves in front of the Vatican?
Well, there's that statue, but they have 3 professional-grade astronomical observatories.
Yes. And why would a church need an observatory?
Well, what's it got to do with saving souls and charity hospitals and teaching children how to read and write, which is what the Catholic Church is known for. Charity hospitals and running schools and saving souls. What in the world would they spend millions of dollars on 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 professional-grade astronomical observatories?
Yeah, I only knew they had 1. I didn't know they had 2.
They've got 3. They've got 3. The one I'm most familiar with is the one in Arizona. They've got 2 others.
Well, I know there's one, I think, at the South Pole.
Possibly. The Holy See is a country. They have their own postal stamps. They have their own army, though they work on silly uniforms. But they're a country. They're a sovereign state. And they've been around for not quite 1,700 years or so. There's persistent stories, Bad Baby, that you probably heard about the ancient library at Alexandria, Egypt, and how the Roman army burned the 40,000 manuscripts that were there.
Oops. Hold on. Okay.
Okay.
I was trying to mute Ohio back, and I touched you.
That's okay. There's an alternative to that story. The alternative is that the manuscripts concerning science, mathematics, engineering, and so forth were taken back to Rome, and that what they burned were There's also a belief that the first modern scientist to look at these was Nikola Tesla. Now, what's not commonly known, Bad Baby, is that Nikola Tesla's father worked for the Vatican.
Really?
Yes, which very likely would have given Nikola Tesla access to the Vatican vaults. And looking at these strange objects, which had been in custody of the Catholic priests and monks for many, many centuries, 17 plus centuries, that they couldn't figure out what they were looking at. Well, Nikola Tesla was an electrical engineer, and he looked at these things and was able to create machines based on those engineers' drawings. Think about it. Man. Nikola Tesla did as an individual what teams of hundreds of scientists working with Westinghouse couldn't do. Now, was he that bright?
That's the documentary on how Westinghouse was up against him.
Right. Well, Westinghouse was a bright guy. He had hundreds of very bright scientists and engineers working for him. They couldn't do what Nikola Tesla could do. Now, that a lot of sharp pieces of the puzzle start falling into place once you understand that in all likelihood what Nikola Tesla was doing was taking engineer's drawings that were probably several thousand years old, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 years old, and figuring out what the hell they meant when nobody else was able to.
Mm-hmm.
That plays into Planet X because our ancestors, and this goes to the need for the powers that be to keep Darwinian, the flawed theory of Darwinian evolutionary theory in people's minds as being true, when it's not true. So when you see evidence of high technology 4,000, 8,000, 12,000 years ago on this planet, they say, oh, it's aliens. As long as they can convince people that the nuclear war that took place, and this is a well-known fact when people look into it, there was a nuclear war on this planet 12,000 years ago. As long as we can convince people it was aliens and not our ancestors, then we can keep the flawed theory of Darwinian evolution alive.
Is everything we were taught as children a big lie?
Children and adults.
Well, yeah, it's just,
It is. It's a tough wake-up call, but it is. As you know, you read my bio on the Vietnam vet. We have not been in a legitimate war since the War of 1812.
No.
Well, we got the time, so we might as well do this. A civil war takes place inside the boundaries of one country, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay. When one country fights another country, that's not a civil war by definition. In 1860, the Confederate States of America was no longer part of the United States. It was a separate country with a constitution, a president, a Congress, a monetary system, defined and defended borders. It was a separate, freestanding country. Therefore, there could not have been a civil war in 1861, 1864, and so forth. It was one country invading and attacking another country. Lie number one. Lie number two. In 1898, the battleship Maine American battleship was peacefully sitting in Havana Harbor, Cuba, minding its own business when it blew up. Patty Hearst's grandpa, William Randolph Hearst, owned 20-something newspapers in major cities. He took great pride in helping personally start the Spanish-American Wars. Divers, decades later, found out that the battleship Maine blew itself up. It was not Spanish commandos. Lie number two. In 1917, the passenger liner Lusitania was getting ready to leave for Ireland. The German embassy was running ads in the New York Times. Do not book passage on this ship. It will be carrying weapons of war. It will be a legitimate target of war. Do not book passage on the ship. Well, Americans did anyway, about 300-something Americans. So Lusitania is moving across the North Atlantic in a convoy to be safe. For no reason explained now, a century later, it slowed down and broke off from the convoy as it approached Ireland, making it a tempting, legitimate target for a German submarine, which sunk it. Lie number 3, we had no business getting involved in World War I. None whatsoever. We had no enemies in that war. Lie number...
problem. We should know, if we just worry about our own country and stay out of everybody else's country, we wouldn't be in war.
Absolutely. Well, lie number 4. Franklin Roosevelt put an oil embargo on Japan, knowing full well it would cause enough turmoil among the Japanese high command that they would want to go to war with it because of the oil embargo, the scrap metal embargo, and other things. Franklin Roosevelt, and there was a movie about the British. Was a Hollywood version, but it's fairly historically accurate. The British Navy captured a German submarine. I think it was 1939 or so. The date really doesn't matter. On board that submarine, they found the Enigma machine, a mechanical device to encryption and decryption. They took the crew into custody. They sunk the submarine. They kept the crew from contact with the Red Cross. The German high command thought the submarine went to the bottom of the ocean. From that day forward, British intelligence was able to decrypt every encrypted message between Germany and Japan and Italy, including the message that gave the date and the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Winston Churchill gave that message to the reformed bootlegger, Joe Kennedy, the father of John Kennedy, the ambassador to England. Joe Kennedy hand-carried that message across the Atlantic, handed to Mr. President Franklin Roosevelt. And Roosevelt knew well in advance of the attack on Pearl Harbor. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, he did everything he could to get maximum death and destruction when that attack happened in the morning of December 7th, 1941.
So that was a huge false flag event then.
Well, false, I'm not sure if the term false flag applies in that particular instance. It could have been stopped. But it was one. The admiral in charge of Pearl Harbor, the general in charge of Schofield Barracks, both requested court-martial. With the court-martial, they would have had something they couldn't get otherwise, the power of subpoena. To subpoena witnesses, to subpoena documents. They were denied having court-martial. They asked to be court-martialed, but it was denied. So we entered a war we had no business with. We entered into an alliance. We always hear about how evil Hitler was. Well, granted, the man was evil. But if you count, if evil has a scale of 1 to 10, he was way down the scale from our partner in that war, Joe Stalin, our ally. And Hitler was a Sunday school student compared to the death caused by Joe Stalin, our ally in World War II. Another war we had no business being involved with. We had no enemies. We could have stopped Japan from that attack if we'd chosen to. We engaged in activity which made Japan our enemy with the oil embargo. And the consequence of being in that war, besides losing 250,000 Americans, was giving communism control over a big chunk of the planet for a really long time. Korean War was the closest thing we've had to a legitimate war because of treaty obligations. General MacArthur wanted to use nuclear weapons on the Red Chinese. President Truman's advisor on the matter said, no, Mr. President, we can't do that. The Red Chinese have nuclear weapons. Also, it turned out that advisor was a communist. The communist Chinese did not have nuclear weapons, and MacArthur could have ended that war in a heartbeat. And he should have, but he was denied that opportunity, and of course he resigned his commission. The Vietnam War, my war. Well, the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, finally wrote his autobiography. Now, most of the 55,000 names on that black granite wall in Washington, D.C., of the men and women who died in Vietnam, the majority of the 55,000 names are there because of something called the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara admits in his autobiography it never happened. There was no double talking incident. It did not happen. Now, there's a true false flag operation for you there, Bad Baby.
Yeah.
Which means the majority of those names on that black granite wall in Washington, D.C. are there because of something that didn't happen, the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The current two wars that we're wrapping up or trying to wrap up, Iraq, you may have seen the video of President Bush in a black tie tuxedo making a joke about, how about those weapons of mass destruction? How about that?
I saw that.
You saw that. He's making a joke which cost the lives of how many thousands of American men and women and national treasure?
Yeah.
And of course the jokes about chasing after bin Laden, hiding in a cave in Afghanistan. And we went to war with an entire country because of that. The Taliban wasn't our enemy. Bin Laden, Saudi Arabia was. Well, he wasn't hiding in a cave in Afghanistan. He was in a very nice, very comfortable compound in our allied country, Pakistan.
And what about the speech he did? Did you see the one where he did? He was joking about, where are those weapons of mass destruction?
Right.
They're not over here.
Right.
No, they're not over here, and everybody's laughing.
That's the speech I'm talking about, where it's a black tie fundraiser.
Oh, I just feel it's funny about people dying.
Well, no normal person would make fun of that, but he did. And for every person who dies in the war, typically there's 8 or 10 who survive with injuries that will be anywhere from minor to affect them in a horrible fashion the rest of their lives.
Well, I had read an article that said that the reason that they call the tags that are on the soldiers dog tags is because we're nothing but dogs to them.
Well, you can do that. Dogs have ID tags. They were old. I don't know where that originates from. I've still got my dog tag.
I just think that it's horrible that young men go into war thinking that they're fighting for our freedom, but actually what they're really fighting for is oil and lies and, a power, and it's just deceit.
There's a book that was also made into a PBS documentary. The title of the book is The Prize. Real simple title, easy to remember. The Prize. And what that book does, Bad Baby, is document the involvement in wars. I'm not sure it mentioned the Spanish-American War, but World War I, World War II, and so forth, and how big oil money and big oil interests were heavily involved in those wars, which of course they were.
Mm-hmm. Iraq wasn't about mass destruction. I saw a picture of a soldier sitting on a whole bunch of gold in the back of a dump truck.
Gold?
Yep.
And what war was this?
It was in Iraq, I guess, when they took over that the castle where the guy left. I can't remember his name.
Hussein?
Yeah. And they took the gold from there. And someone posted it and said, this is what the war is about. It's not about mass destruction.
Well, one of the objectives of the invading army was to seize the archaeological treasures held in Baghdad. Archaeology has two jobs, maybe. One is to recover ancient technology. The other is to keep us from finding out about it.
Yeah. Don't let us know the truth.
No, not at all. And there is ancient technology that they're always trying to recover it and figure out what it was, how it worked, and see how what they can do to make it useful today.
So what do you think about what's going on in our country at the present? As far as them trying to take everyone's guns and...
Well, the events in my hometown, St. Louis and Ferguson, Missouri, have become national news. A week ago tomorrow, the Ayatollah commented on Ferguson, Missouri, of all things, talking about how we were harming human rights. The guy has to have a sense of humor. The private information I'm getting, I got a man on the ground there. He's a St. Louis County police officer. He's been there continuously. Today is number far worse, far bloodier, following the funeral Sunday. Al Sharpton's coming back to town to deliver the eulogy. We have agitators coming in from Chicago, Detroit, where the police have been arresting them. New York, California.
Agitators?
There's a lot of money changing hands here. It costs money to ship people across country. There's the transportation, their food, their lodging. The officers there in Ferguson, Missouri, have been shot at pretty much every day. The night before last, they confiscated automatic weapons with civilians would call machine guns from the protesters. There are protesters wearing body armor and gas masks now. And here's what's been happening. In the morning, the good people of Ferguson, black and white, clean up the mess from the night before. There's peaceful protests in the daytime, and up until 10 p.m., more or less peaceful protests. About 10 o'clock, the good people from Ferguson and nearby areas, they go home and they call it a day, leaving behind people who want to cause trouble and burn and loot. That's what's been going on now for 2 weeks. It's a war zone.
I've been seeing.
It's literally a war zone. It's not a flippant statement.
Yeah,
literally
in other words, you don't want to be on the streets after 10 o'clock.
Oh, no. It's very dangerous. These men are being shot at with firearms. They're having bricks thrown at them. They're having bottles full of flaming gasoline called Molotov cocktails being thrown at them. It's a war zone. There's been more than 24 police cruisers completely destroyed. Time to take it to the junkyard. Another 36 plus shot up with firearms. The police helicopter shot up. Television helicopters shot up. Businesses burned and looted. Private homes burned. I don't know what the death count is now, or the number of people arrested, but there have been people shot to death, and there has been, I don't know how many hundred people arrested. Some of them more than once, by the way.
Do you think that, I have heard that some of the people that live there have been arrested for sitting on their porch with a weapon to protect their home.
I haven't heard that, but I know I have friends that live in Ferguson. Some are still there protecting their property. Some have left to a safe haven. Here's something that's not commonly known, but this will be good for all your listeners in case they ever find themselves in this position. Most homes and businesses have insurance. If your house burns down, you have, homeowners. And the same way with a business. Businesses also have insurance on their inventory. If you suffer a loss due to civil disorder, the insurance evaporates. It's gone.
Really?
Oh, really? Yes. Oh, really?
Wow.
But the debt doesn't go away. So if you have a business and it gets burned up, the mortgage is still there. You still owe that money. The inventory gets burned up and looted. You still owe, if there's money owed on that, you still owe that. But you don't get a check in the mail from the insurance company to compensate. That's why when you see a city that's had riots, that's why you see that area devastated for many years afterwards.
Hey, the little guy loses his business.
He's gone. He's finished. He's toast. He's done. He's over with. When the LA riots happened, and the Korean businessmen were literally protecting their lives with firearms, that's why, because there's no insurance.
So it makes you wonder why they're even allowing people, to come in from Chicago and Detroit. You think
it's until the government declared a state of emergency a week ago yesterday. That gives the police extraordinary powers they normally don't have. You normally just can't stop cars just because you feel like it. It has to be probable cause, unless there's a state of emergency. When a state of emergency, it's a polite way of saying martial law, by the way.
Yeah.
There's one synonym. State of emergency and martial law are synonyms. But under those conditions, the police have extraordinary power they normally don't have. And yes, they can set up checkpoints and stop you for no reason at all other than they feel like it, because it's a checkpoint. And they can ask your ID, and if you don't live in the area, they can already turn around and leave.
But they're not, are they?
I believe they are. Some of the residential areas, they've been doing that. The man I work with, he's staying downtown to deal with the rioters, but around the area, not far away, a few blocks away, they are setting up checkpoints and turning away people who don't live there.
So what do you think, John? Is it going to...
It's going to get bad. There's a possibility. I don't know what the grand plan is. The grand plan may be to have riots break out nationwide. We've already had demonstrations in New York and California. If there's a loss of life, if people get shot to death, and especially if it gets televised, all hell's going to break loose.
Yeah.
There's a grand jury looking into what Officer Wilson did. They're probably going to delay any results for 2 months to let things cool down. Of course, they're not going to recommend an indictment on this man. He was fighting for his life. He was hit in the face so hard that it broke what's called the orbital bone or orbital socket around his eye. And the 18-year-old who died was 6'4" and weighed 300 pounds. They keep saying unarmed teenager. Well, you're 6'4" and weigh 300 pounds and trying to hurt somebody with your bare hands. You can kill a man with your bare hands quite easily if you're 6'4" and 300 pounds. The officer was fighting for his life, literally fighting for his life when he finally took his weapon out, which was being fought over also. The perpetrator, Michael Brown, the dead guy, was trying to get the weapon also. He finally got control of the weapon and saved his life by shooting the perpetrator.
Well, I know people in Detroit are pretty pumped up about all this, too.
Let them be pumped up. They're wrong.
Well, I know. They're also all ticked off about, having the pensions cut and the bankruptcy and...
Well, they can thank the Democrats running that city.
So, it's like they're all being, like all the big cities are being pushed.
Right. Well, how many decades has a corrupt Democratic mayors run that city? 20, 30 years?
Those speed limit signs that when you're coming in, they're digital and it says workmen ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody changed one when the mayor was being tried.
Uh-huh.
And it's welcome to Detroit. Even our mayor is a criminal.
I like that.
Yeah, someone took a picture of it and posted it up on Facebook.
Well, good for them.
Yeah. And I thought, well, at least someone's got a sense of humor. But you know what? It's the truth.
Of course it is.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are honest, to tell you the truth. I mean, I think they all need to be thrown out. We need to start over.
Well, you wouldn't get an argument out of me on that, bad baby. Now, going back to, and I work kind of got away from Planet X, but that's okay. That's okay with you. It's pretty topical. Michael Brown, the 18-year-old who was deceased, he committed a crime just minutes before the encounter with Officer Wilson. He committed a strong arm robbery in a convenience store, which was videotaped. The chief of police was forced into releasing it under the Sunshine Law of Missouri. The governor was pretty upset, and the family was saying, "Oh, you're trying to hurt the reputation of Michael Brown." Well, I'm sorry, but he hurt his own reputation when he committed the strong arm robbery at that convenience store minutes before the encounter with Officer Wilson. But have you seen that video?
No, I haven't.
No, it's readily available. It shows him
A diaphragm of the autopsy and how many times he was shot, and that they said that he was, shot in the top of the head like he was trying to protect himself.
Right. Well, that's statements from people who don't know what they're talking about. Is what that's from.
Yeah.
The autopsy also showed that Michael Brown had a controlled substance in his bloodstream, that being marijuana. I have not seen the complete toxicology report. I don't know what all was in there, but it's been released publicly that he did have marijuana in his bloodstream.
We have a caller that is raising their hand. Let's see. East Michigan. You have a question for John?
Yeah, I do. Regarding the planet warming, you said that it was that the planet X is causing the planet to warm from the inside.
Right.
And I'm just, is that because of the watering down of the salinity of the ocean?
No, that's a separate matter. That's a separate matter. And some of these things, what's your name, caller?
Jody.
Hi, Jody. The interaction with the 10th planet has multiple effects. And one of them is to heat up the inside of our planet. The water melting is related to that because the ice is warming up also on the bottom in Greenland and the Antarctic, causing that fresh water to get to the oceans. So there is a relationship there. Yes.
Does it have anything to do with underground cities, underground railroads?
Well, that's an area that I haven't gotten evidence that I find credible yet about that. I've seen the same stories and heard the same stories about the hollow earth and underground bases and so forth. I know the military has underground bases, but the U.S. Navy has what might be called an undersea city. City meaning basically 200
And will
people.
Washington, D.C. be underwater?
Oh, absolutely. It's the highest
Is that
point.
why they did the Denver airport? Is that going to? I heard that was going to be the one.
There's going to be two new capitals because the country will be split east-west of the Mississippi River. The primary capital will be Denver. The secondary capital will be Atlanta. Atlanta is the highest altitude major city east of Mississippi. But the primary capital will be Denver. And the Mississippi River will be 50 to 100 miles wide and a couple hundred feet deep.
Do we lose a lot of Michigan?
A lot of Michigan's going to be toast, right?
Because what I'm seeing on the other map is that there's just like a little strip that comes like across up into the thumb area, and then a piece up in the top.
Right. Well, you're talking about the Scallion map there.
Yeah, so that's wrong.
Well, according to
that's where I live.
I know. Well, here's what the Navy veteran said about Scallion's map, and I showed it to several of them. It said Scallion's map has a lot, but not complete accuracy east of the Rocky Mountains, but is not even close west of the Rockies. So you give me your address off air, Bad Baby. I'll drop it on my DVDs in the mail, and you'll get it to look at.
Oh, okay. I'll send it out to you in an email.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
Anything else, Jody?
Jody, you have any other questions?
Well, I just have a comment, I guess. I live by railroads, and they used to be above ground. They put them underground now, and I can say probably the home is probably, I'm not real good at judging distance, but I would say maybe a quarter or an eighth of a mile from the railroad itself.
Right.
And what we've noticed is that the cold water from the water faucet in the tap sometimes does not actually get cold. So it does seem as though it's warmed up the earth somewhat because of and it's warming the water from the tap to the point where cold water does not run cold.
Well, there could be any number of causes for that, Jody, that I wouldn't have access to or be able to comment on. So.
Okay.
I really can't. There's a lack of information to really comment on that. Typical. What state are you in, Jody?
Michigan also.
Michigan. Okay. I'm the first eldest son in 4 generations in the Moore family who did not become a plumber, so I know a little bit about. I grew up on jobs, construction sites doing plumbing work. But how far they bury the freshwater pipes is determined by how deep the frost line is. In Michigan, your frost line is probably 3 to 4 feet deep because you have pretty severe winters up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that also will determine the temperature of the water coming out of your pipe. So I can't comment on any further than that. other than to say that it sounds like something's changed, and I really can't comment on it any further.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jody.
Okay, baby.
I said thank you, honey. What about the sinkholes, John? I mean, I heard...
Well, there's been a dramatic increase worldwide of sinkholes.
Yeah, I was looking today, I haven't looked for a few days, and, I found one where a whole city block went down. I think it was in Brazil. And also I heard that there were a bunch of them that were popping up all along the New Madrid.
Yeah, us Barefoot Hillbillies call it the New Madrid, by the way, the New Madrid fault line. One of the more interesting sinkholes was the Corvette Museum in Kentucky.
I saw that too. That broke my heart because those vests were cool.
Well, they were, but they've been recovering them. I probably got them all out by now, but I saw the construction crew with the crane bringing one out. They got it up on solid ground and checked out everything. They fired it up and started right up, and there was a cheer from the audience. So, yeah, that was heartbreaking to see those beautiful, antique Corvettes and newer Corvettes fall into that hole in that museum. In my opinion, that's a secondary effect of the 10th planet interacting with us and causing these seismic matters to happen. There's always been sinkholes, but it appears there's been a dramatic increase in the size and number of them worldwide.
Now, I have noticed that this summer is a lot cooler up here in Michigan than, we have a lot of 90-degree days. We haven't had those. And right now, in the middle of September or in the middle of August, we're having weather like my leaves are changing on the trees already. They're turning red and orange.
Right. Well, that's happened nationwide. A lot of unusual record-breaking cool weather this summer. And that's all a direct consequence of what the jet stream is doing.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that we're going to have, because you said we're in the midst of the effects of it, and last winter we had a horrendous winter.
Right.
Do you think we are in for another one?
Well, that's what all the people who make their living doing that are saying. It's going to be another winter as bad or worse than the winter of 2013, 2014.
Well, I guess I'll hibernate again.
Well, we're cutting firewood down here in south central Missouri. Our winters are not nearly as bad as what you had up there, but for us, they're cold, and we just deal with it. Most of my neighbors out here in the Ozarks, they burn firewood, burn wood to keep warm, and so we're getting a good supply of firewood cut and we're ready to go.
Funny that you mentioned that because that's what I'm working on right now. I got a load being delivered tomorrow.
That's good. Yeah, it kind of is very satisfying and gives you peace of mind to know that wood's sitting out there waiting to be used, doesn't it?
Well, the thing about burning wood is if you have a power outage, at least you'll still have heat.
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on which system
the blower on the wood burner ain't going to work, but at least you can warm up. And it's weird that you mentioned that because when my husband was passing away, and it was in the wintertime, and we did have a power outage, I made sure he was in the living room by the wood burner.
Right.
And he was very ill. He didn't need to be cold. So you got to think about stuff like that too.
Absolutely.
You got to think about stocking up on that wood because if you've got mass hysteria going on out, you aren't going out and cutting heavy.
No. Last thing you need is draw attention to yourself with a chainsaw.
Yeah. Well, give us some advice. I mean, everybody's out there like, well, all right, we know this is coming. What do we do? I know live one day at a time. Don't worry about it. But as far as what do you think that people should be doing?
Okay, well, let's go over some positive things that we're talking about with doom and gloom. Well, first of all, get your spiritual house in order. That's the most important thing you can do. I do private consultations, and I deal with people who are blue-collar workers and people who have 8 digits in their net worth, both ends of the spectrum. And I've had clients who could buy semi-tractor trailer loads of food, medical supplies, and so forth, but there's no peace in their heart that they have not got their spiritual house in order. It doesn't matter how many warehouses full of stuff they own, they will not have peace in their heart. So work on that first, getting your spiritual house in order, whatever that is for you. The next comes skills. Obviously, there's dozens of skills a person can have. The skills that any farmer or farmer's wife would have would be excellent skills. But there's two skills that'll be in big demand and short supply, whether you've got a group of 6 people or a group of 600, bad baby. And here's those two skills. One is emergency medical treatment skills. The other is emergency communication and radio skills.
Oh, my God, I can't believe it. Do you know, for the last 3 years, and I'm not a doctor, but I've been watching all the doctor shows and taking notes on medical things.
Well, good for you.
And I also teach holistic healing and natural supplements and stuff like that. But it's weird that you said that medical is, and I tell people, too, that if they do a bug-out bag where they have to leave, like if there's a flood and they're on the edge of it, say they got to leave that area, they're going to want a bag that has some kind of medical things in it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I encourage people to get their emergency medical training, whether it's a Red Cross first aid course. Sometimes the local fire department will put on a first aid course, junior colleges, hospitals. There's lots of places you can get basic first aid CPR training.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, in a crisis of almost any nature, dialing 911 may just get you a busy signal. So if the person you care about has we talked about chainsaws, you got a chainsaw injury, that person may bleed out because you don't know how to stop the bleeding.
Correct.
So these are not optional skills. You have to have these skills. I'm working with my local community here with the mayor, the chief of police, the fire chief, the head of paramedics, and about a dozen civilians to help people get trained and get equipped to deal with whatever it might be, whether it's a tornado, flood, an earthquake, and help the community get itself back together. And I encourage everybody else to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Your first responders now will still be your first responders in a crisis, whatever the crisis might be, whether it's Planet X related or not. Meet these people. You may want to join a lot of fire departments have a auxiliary you can join to help out with the fire department. Sometimes the sheriff's department has a sheriff's auxiliary you can join and get some training, get to know your local cops, which is always a good thing. Get active in the community. Sometimes
I recommend people to do. They have on the satellite. If some people have satellite TV, they have a survival program, and I watch that guy a lot. And I've learned a lot of things about, if you're in certain situations and you have to survive. And there are so many things. What if you got a can of soup or tuna, but you forget to have a can opener? You can take that can of tuna and rub it on the cement until you can just take your buck knife and pop it right open.
Right.
And those are the things you have to learn.
Exactly.
Did you know that a Crayola crayon will light as a candle?
It's wax, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yep. Emergency candles, people. Crayola crayons. You can light them and they'll burn for hours.
Well, that's good to know. There's lots of nuances like that of little things and tricks of the trade, so to speak, that could certainly come in handy.
Yeah, I always tell people, too, when they go garage sale and watch for the oil lanterns and buy yourself a few bottles of that lantern oil.
Absolutely. That's a good source of light, and, of course, they make some heat as well. My friend Tim Spencer, who's also I mentioned earlier in the show, he runs a website. The name of it is ruralsurvival.info, which has dozens of articles that will help you have a full, fun, productive life on the farm in good times and bad times. Excellent.
Tools are an important thing, don't you think, John?
Tools?
Yeah, sledgehammers, axes, shovels.
All the tools. My neighbors, and you live on a farm, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Farmers have multiple skills: carpentry skills, electrician skills, mechanical skills. picture themselves, they're almost embarrassed. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's common on farms and ranches all over the United States. There's men and women with the skills to do pretty much anything and everything when it comes to animal husbandry, gardening, carpenter work, plumbing work, electrical work, and do that, you know, competently with tools they have on site. A lot of times, all the materials are already on site, so they plan ahead for what they need with plumbing equipment, carpenter stuff, electrical stuff, and so forth. And that's just the nature of people living in the country. And people in the city don't have a clue how independent, self-reliant, and skilled people living in the country are.
Yeah. Okay, now for food, what do you recommend? I know
if you're on a tight budget, if you're on a tight budget, the cheapest way to store the most amount of food is buying bulk grain. You can go to any feed store and make sure you buy feed beginning with an F, Foxtrot, as opposed to seed beginning with an X, S, Sierra. Seed meant for planting will be treated with various chemicals you really, really don't want to eat. But seed meant for animal feed, bought in 50-pound sacks, perfectly healthy, perfectly good. You can buy 50 pounds of barley or oats or spelt. I'd stay away from corn. I wouldn't get any soybeans at all. Corn and wheat, you're almost certainly going to be getting genetically modified grains. But less likely with oats and barley, spelt, to get a genetically modified product. 50-pound bags, less than $20 typically, even with today's inflated prices.
So where would someone in the city go to buy that?
Typically around the edges of cities is going to be stores that cater to ranchers. You may have to go to the suburbs, but they're there.
Yeah, drive out in the country and go to the local
and even your local nursery. I lived in a suburb of St. Louis for most of my adult life called Kirkwood, which is a very nice middle-class suburb. And there was a store there that just a plain old nursery that people would go to get their ornamental plants. They could get these bags of feed for you also.
Mm-hmm. So ask your local nursery.
Local groceries generally would not be able to get 50-pound bags of grain.
Mm-hmm.
But the local nursery probably could. Where are we here, Bad Baby?
We're trying to figure out what people can have.
Store the grains. We need to talk to people how to store the grains. I've used every method. There's some I would not recommend. Such as
How about rice?
Rice doesn't keep that well. White rice isn't all that nutritious. It keeps better than brown rice. Brown rice, because of the acid in the rice, the oils in the rice.
Well, what I found was a video where this guy was saving 50-pound buckets of rice, and what he was doing was he was putting a block of dry ice in there, and then he poured all the rice in, and then he put the top on, and then he would wash it, and then the top, as the dry ice was melting, it would suck the top down, and it would blow the top up, and he would burp it. You have to burp it until it's done. And he kept burping it, and it created its own seal, and he said that would last like 20 years.
Right. You can do that with white rice. It's not terribly nutritious, but it will fill you up. Dry ice, of course, is carbon dioxide. It doesn't melt so much as it evaporates. But it displaces the oxygen. All bulk grains have larvae, insect larvae, that will hatch out.
But it said it killed the larva.
It doesn't kill. Well, they just die for lack of oxygen.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, they can't breathe. There's no oxygen.
Oh.
We can't breathe carbon dioxide. I mean, you can, but you can't live.
Isn't that what's happening to the fish and the birds and all that? What I read is that they're swimming wrong because of the gravitational, the north to south is screwing them up, and that they all go into one area and there's not enough oxygen.
Well, that's certainly I haven't looked into that, Bad Baby, but I can see where that certainly is a possibility. not that easy to get a hold of dry ice. Typically, in most cities, there'll be several places. You may have to drive some distance. Occasionally, you may find a grocery store that carries it. Nitrogen is another neutral, non-poisonous gas that you can use to store grains with. Commercial, industrial supply houses supply gas for industry. They carry bottles of nitrogen and hoses and regulators and hollow tubes that you can use to displace oxygen. If you had a 55, and if you're putting in a 55-gallon drum, it has to be food grade. You have to know for a fact there's been nothing else in there. Otherwise, you'd be poisoning yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mylar bags are a great way to go. I've got probably a ton of grain stored in Mylar bags, 5-gallon Mylar bags, where we used diatomaceous earth for that storage, and I would not recommend that. It's just an absolute mess. But it is effective and it does work. And diatomaceous earth is also healthy for people to consume themselves, by itself. So those are a couple of good methods right there. The others tend to be more difficult and hard to do. If you're doing small volumes, you can get a vacuum sealer from the local discount store and vacuum seal grains. That would be an effective
a lot
way.
of those vacuum sealers in the yard sale.
Why not? If you're at the yard sale, pick it up for $5 or $10.
What about sprouts?
Sprouts is a great way to get nutrition, and especially if you have to be indoors. You can put your sprouts in a where it gets a little sunlight from a window, and have some fresh greens for you. It's very healthy, very nutritious.
And they grow real fast. Now, when you buy the sprout seeds, those don't have to be stored for any, they would be fine in a vacuum seal bag, wouldn't they?
As far as I know, you want to keep them away from radiation and heat. A cool, dry place is a good place for any seeds, including sprouts. And there's kits you can get at, as I'm sure you know, Bad Baby, that you can grow your sprouts in these kits.
Mm-hmm. I also tell people to have books, because if you have to keep your children, you want books.
In my location, we have hundreds of books, both educational books and manuals and dictionaries, and of course, books for entertainment as well.
Books too, for people who don't know how to survive. Get a book on how to survive, or a book on how to garden.
Absolutely. Everybody should have a private, personal library with all those topics.
Well, these are some good points, The ham radio thing, I can't afford one, but I got a TV that has sideband. Well,
the people you want to talk to have to have compatible equipment, Bad Baby. There's two parts to this. One is talking to your team or people you care about, whatever the business might be. The other is being able to intercept the police department, the sheriff's department, the fire department, the paramedics, the city workers, road crews. There's two different types of radios. The interception part, of course, is scanners. Being able to talk to people you need to talk to, well, that could be ham radio, that could be FRS, family radio service, it could be CB. There's any number of ways to do that. Commercial radios is another way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there is some
people
expense.
Don't realize there's not going to be any telephone, correct? No turning the light.
Well, it depends on the crisis. The government can shut down cell phones and only talk to them themselves if they choose to. They have that capability. I know that for a fact. Mm-hmm. Or there could be a bad enough crisis where nobody can use a cell phone. Well, they can do whatever they choose with cell phones. That's all.
They can turn our internet off on us too.
Absolutely, they can shut down anything they want.
Well,
they can shut down your access and my access to internet while they keep it for themselves.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the top of the second hour, and I want to thank you so much, John, for joining us. Great
it was fun.
Any last comment for everybody?
Well, just get your spiritual house in order, work on your skills, might want to check out some of the articles at my website, thelibertyman.com. I listen to my radio show Monday through Friday. I got 2 shows I do.
And is there a call-in number for your show?
Well, there's public broadcasting out. I give it out when I'm live on the air. We don't need to try to have people. Just go to my website. There's links to listen live, and there's also archives. You can listen anytime you choose to.
My clock is not correct. Do you hear my clock?
I hear something.
I have a Harley Davidson clock.
Okay.
And it just went off for midnight, but it's not midnight yet.
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, my clock's going off.
That's okay.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank you. We got about 5 minutes. Is there anyone else that has a question?
Okay. I'm going to stop the recording there. For those that came in late, that was a pre-recorded show. I think that was back in 2015. I didn't have a guest scheduled for tonight, so I thought I'd look up a past show with John Moore and play that recording. I'm sorry if it was kind of hard for you guys to hear it. I'm sorry I wasn't able to book a guest this week. I've been sick all week, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. I am planning on getting someone out here for next week, though. And then the following week after that, I am going to have Steve and Scott back on. But there is one thing. Give me a minute to pull it up. And it's something I came across today that Dave Hodges had put out. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dave Hodges, but he had put out a short video on what was going on with the foreign troops in our country, and it like blew me away. Well, I talk about the foreign troops all the time, and I'm familiar that they're in our country. But when he made this video, when he made this video and updated, because I haven't been following what's going on, and I kind of figured, with all the rioting going on in our country right now, that they would eventually have the UN or the foreign troops step in on it. And that's exactly what I think is going on. So I want you to listen to what Dave Hodges had said on this video.
Hi, this is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, and you're listening to the Red List News, where we are freeing America, one enslaved mind at a time. Well, I just got done interviewing Paul Martin in an interview that will be released sometime on Friday. And Paul and I discussed, in part, small part of the interview, about all the foreign troops around the country, in fact, people who he's encountered who have first-hand knowledge of populations that are on various military bases like Fort Bliss. And we've been told uniformly and consistently and often that there's a tremendous uptick, a tremendous increase in foreign troop presence on our soil. And in particular, something I've talked about now for the better part of 7 or 8 months is the unconventional warfare exercise number 16. And it's amazing to me. This UX-16 for short is taking place in Texas, but it's not confined to Texas. And it's taking place on 4 military bases, all large bases, all involving foreign troops. And what are they preparing for? They're preparing for civil war of a guerrilla variety. In fact, one of the things you can surmise from looking at their BizOp ad advertisement, that what they're talking about bringing in, or what they brought in, was someone to play the part of an American guerrilla war chieftain, and they needed several of them. Well, translated, what that means is, was an officer in the American Army, his unit has deserted, and they are now fighting on behalf of the people using covert guerrilla techniques. That's what they're preparing for. And before you go, oh, come on, Dave, I'll return to this story in a second, but let's just venture up to Colorado. The Russians are at Fort Carson. The Russians are near LaPorte, Colorado, up near the Wyoming border, as are the Gurkhas, and this is where the rubber meets the road. I've published pictures of these people. I've done interviews with Paul Martin that we published on this. The Gurkhas shoot at his shooting range. The Gurkhas, who are they? They are anti-insurgent, anti-guerrilla warfare troops that were initially trained by the Brits to fight in Afghanistan against paramilitary and revolutionary kind of techniques, guerrilla warfare, if you will. And now they're in northern Colorado preparing to do the same thing right on our soil. I could go on and on and on, but we've got the reports, of the UN trucks. It goes on forever. Let me bring it down to the level of Texas now. I've been in contact with a person who's been involved in these UX drills, and I have heard from him now on 3 occasions. On the first occasion, he told a most disturbing story where his fellow officers were brought in and sat down in a room in rare chairs that were in 3 rows and comprising about 15 officers. And they were being demonstrated enhanced interrogation techniques by foreign troops. So they brought in an American family. Of course, they were actors. And they wanted to extract information from the American who was dressed in Army fatigue. There's your guerrilla warfare aspect from UX-16. And he refused in this scenario to answer questions. So rather than beat him, what they did was they took his family members one at a time and shot them in the back of the head. Now, not really, but this was the implication, the training. Now, what this officer told me, he said, Dave, I'm very familiar with these techniques, as any of us would be, and we know we're prepared to deal with this should we ever be in a state of war. We've been trained how to handle torture and how to maintain silence and so forth. But he said they weren't there to teach us something we already knew. He said he was sure there were hidden cameras there, and they were videotaping and measuring the responses of the American officers that were there watching. Did they have the stomach for it? Would they capitulate and go along with it? It's really hard to say. And as a result, he said that he was absolutely horrified. He's sure that he flunked any test to ever be part of this kind of operation. But he's also talked to other officers and have seen similar things. We're preparing for civil war. This administration, the globalists, are not going to allow a peaceful transition of power between Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Will they make their move before the inauguration? That would be my guess. Or will they make their move after the inauguration, maybe in terms of an assassination attempt or actually carrying out an assassination on Donald Trump? I think that's also a good guess at this point. So therefore, folks, you better be ready. You better have your food, your water, your guns, your ammo, and your neighborhood alliances. You better get ready, and you better get ready now. We're headed into some very, very dark days. Well, that's it for the Red List News. Thank you for joining us. I want to remind you that we're offering, I think, one of the most necessary products that you need.
Okay. I heard that today. I came across that today, and I found it very, very disturbing. But I think he's absolutely right. I think I've said it all along that that Obama is not going to allow someone else to come into the White House. I've got a gut feeling that they've got something up their sleeve, and since they're bringing more and more of these foreign soldiers in, they're just going to take over. I have a gut feeling that this scenario is going to play out. So when I came across this today, it just was another eye-opener for me. But I want to thank you all for joining me. I am going to try to book someone for next week. I don't know who yet, but I will probably have a guest out here. Sorry that I couldn't get anyone this week, but it just was a bad week for me with the way my health has been.